guys are looking at this, this is going to be the right side of the wheel head. All right, step number 1, note takers, in all caps and real neat, centering. Centering. Centering is getting a piece of clay in the very middle of the wheel, very center of the wheel, using centrifugal force, some muscle, and you want the clay to be perfectly still before you start to throw. So here is how to center. I'm going to take my ball of clay or my lump of clay. Okay, watch what I do. I kind of rock it around like this in order to cone up, just to light a little bit, cone up the piece. And then I'm going to slap this down into the center of the wheel. Your note should say to do that pretty aggressively. Otherwise, it's not going to stick. So you really have to kind of slap that clay down to a dry wheel. And right now, honestly, look at this. It is stuck on there really good. That's what I want. So at this point, I can start to turn the wheel. Now, if you completely are a bad aim and you plop this clay like over here, you need to peel it off and get it back in the center for the most part. Big pieces of clay too, I will like actually kind of pound into position, but this is pretty much in the center. So I'm going to start my wheel. You can see it's going counterclockwise, and I'm going to go with a pretty aggressive speed. So make a note that this is about medium-high speed. It's the fastest thing
under centering, or is this new?
Centering. Yeah, I'll make it real clear when we do the next step. Centering requires fast speed because you're going to put a lot of force on this clay body. So medium-high. The next note is you're going to wet your hands, and then I'm going to let the hands drip onto the clay. I'm going to do that a couple times. Okay, you see how everything's wet? Everything you do with the clay has to be wet. As soon as it starts to feel sticky on your hands, a lot of times it starts right here on this part of your hand, you need more water. Your right hand, you're going to use this part of your hand right in the middle of the clay. It's kind of a bone right there. It's pretty tough, kind of a karate chop. And I'm going to do that right in the middle of the clay, okay? This hand is going to help hold this hand. Otherwise, it's kind of unsteady and crazy, all right? So I'm going to hold my own hand in a sense. And notice my arm is leaning on the wheel. It's leaning on this, okay? So I kind of hold my own hand. Now this clay, this hand is going to be kind of pressing inward on the outside of the clay. So kind of two things at once. It's like chewing gum and, you know, rubbing your belly and tapping your head. You know, that old thing where people have to really think about what they're doing. So I'm going to press down and press in. See what happens. Once it kind of settles down, you can see that the clay kind of stops moving around. The top hand has smoothed the top. The side hand has smoothed the side, okay? And if this was out of center, it would look like that. You couldn't say, hey, Anderson, can I move on? I'd be like, no, it's totally wobbly. If you don't center it, that wobble, as you do the other steps, will just translate into a really wobbly pot, okay? So one more time, I'm going to press down with this hand. I'm going to press in with this hand. You can almost see the two hands separately doing that, but if you work in tandem, it goes really fast, okay? So one note for you is that I'm literally leaning into class, okay? Into class, whoa, that was weird. Leaning into the clay, like my whole body is leaning into it. My body weight is what forces this into the center. If I just use my hand muscles or even my arm muscles, it's not going to be enough. I'm going to be like going with the wobble. So I ground myself on the wheel, lean in, press down, press in, and eventually the clay really doesn't know where to go. So like physics kind of plays with you because this clay has nowhere to go because it's spinning except for the center. All right, so my notes would say the following. Right hand karate chops the top, something like that, or smooths the top. Left hand smooths the side. And that's basically what's happening, those two things at once. You could make a note to hold your own hand because it creates a triangle base here with my body and my two arms, and then lean on the wheel head for stability. So those are kind of the basics. Okay, step 2. Step 2 is opening. So I'm going to open this clay up. Opening. All right. I'm going to keep my wheel speed, actually. So if you're geeking out and you're like, how fast? Probably the same. for now. It's going to get slower. This is how I open. Again, you might just want to watch and listen, and then we'll write some notes. I'm leaning on the wheel head again. I'm going to take my thumbnails and put them back to back like this. And I'm going to press down into the clay in the center. What I essentially want to do, this is like a cup full of clay. I need to push down and push that clay to the side so that step 3, I can pull it up, okay? So when I do that, look at my thumbnails. Hands are always wet. Because of the spin, you guys, I don't know how to explain this, but my thumbs, they like really easily sink right down into the clay. I barely pressed and it went right down in the center. Granted, I'm gonna stop my wheel. If I press too hard, yeah, I'm gonna go all the way through. Now I've got a cup with a hole in it. I have to start all over. You can't push a bunch of clay in there and try to fix it, okay? So how do you check for the thickness of your pot? I'll explain that right now. I'm gonna take my needle tool, stop your wheel. I'm gonna press that needle all the way down to the wheel head. I know, tragic. You're like, oh my gosh, it has a hole. Don't worry, it's gonna seal up when I'm doing all the other steps. I'm gonna take my finger right next to the needle. If you can see that, I'm touching the clay, and I'll just mark it with my finger and pull that out. And that's how much clay I have from my finger on the clay to the wheel head. It's a good 1/2 inch. You guys see that? That's how you do that. That's the secret trick for figuring out how much clay you have down there. Why would I want clay down there at least that much? Because I know later on, next time we have a demo, I'm going to trim that stuff out and create a foot on my pot, right? You can't do that if you trim if you don't have a lot of clay right there. I'm going to finish opening this. Now I know not to go down any further. I'm not going to press down, but watch my thumbs. When I like where I am down there, so now I'm going to pull my thumbs apart and create the bottom of my artwork. All right, so before you take a note, let's watch this. Put a little water in there. Now I'm not going to go down, but I'm going to pull my hands apart. Look at my thumbs. They're going to work away from each other. And I've revealed the bottom of my artwork, okay? I actually use the side of my thumb to smooth that out and press down a little bit. And let's just clean that up with the sponge. You guys can see the bottom of my artwork, okay? Those of you who've been to my shows and have seen my spoon rests, you can see that that's pretty close. I mean, granted, this is really thick, but that's about how a spoon rest is made. After I make a little dent here, I take it off the wheel. It's one of the easier things to make, okay? Now I'm gonna change views so you guys can see how the clay has kind of built up on the side over here. Because of pushing this so much, I've got like a donut of clay right here. This clay, if I keep opening this, this will fall all the way over, okay? And I have a mess. Does that make sense? So I tell students it's kind of like a donut of clay sitting there. And as soon as it starts to arc out right here, I have to stop. This clay is telling me it needs to go upwards, okay? So I have to pull it up. So that is opening. You can see I have a nice flat bottom of the cup on the inside. Sometimes I add a swirl look in there because later when the cup is real tall, it's hard to reach back down in there and do anything to the bottom, okay? So that is opening. I do the same thing for big bowls or big cups or pots. Same thing now. So step number 3 is called pulling. Pulling. All right, wheel speed. Wheel speed is medium now. It's not slow. It's definitely not fast. I take my foot off the pedal. Sometimes I reach down and actually manually change the speed. To pull, I'm gonna get my hands wet and I do a little bit different hand position. I'm gonna use my longest fingers, so my my middle fingers, and my left hand is gonna be on the outside, or excuse me, on the inside of the pot, and my right hand is gonna be on the outside. And together they're gonna make a caliper. I'm gonna pinch the clay and pull the clay up, okay? So essentially I'm gonna pinch this together right here and pull that clay up. But when I pinch, my fingers are together a little bit more, and it's like a funnel. Clay has to make its way through that. Okay, I've kind of got my hands locked, pinch a little bit of that clay, and then pull it uphill. Okay, did you see that? Did you blink? Okay. Okay, it's almost like magic. I don't know how to say it, but you basically
It's
took
so
that donut
satisfying.
clay and it had nowhere else to go but uphill. Okay, because you made a small opening that clay was trying to get through. So you can see I use my two longer fingers in tandem apart from each other. Okay, so let's take a couple notes and then I'll do a few more pulls. Okay, left hand on the inside, right hand on the outside. Use your longest fingers, right? Because the clay walls, this is a pretty short cup, but eventually when it gets real tall, I actually change my hand position to where it's more up and down. And once your hand can't fit inside that cup anymore, then you got to use other tools or things to get down in there. Take my hands. I like to dribble a little bit of the water right here. The water kind of runs down both sides. You want the sides to be wet. You kind of do that. Okay. And I'm going to do one more pull. I'll kind of do it over here so you guys can see straight on. Notice out here, I'm going to press into the clay and actually make a dent. You see that dent form? Right here? I did the same on the inside. So I'm going to take that dent now and just stay under that and pull that clay up. Okay. Wow, it changed a lot again. How thin should I go? Probably about a quarter inch, about the size of a slab. Make a note, okay? You don't want to throw any thinner than a quarter inch, 3/8, something like that. Okay. I'm going to do one more throw or one more pull because it's kind of thick down here at the bottom. And then up here, I'm barely pressing. There we go. And easy off the top. A lot of students, they don't change their pressure and then they, you know, this is what they do. Watch this. I'm going to ruin my lip. They press, and they don't stop. And they go like that, right at the top. Happens to everybody. Okay, and they freak out. And essentially what I did is I just kept the pressure, but I didn't let off at the top. So it pinched really severely that top of my lip there. I know you're like, tragic, that looks so good. I'm not worried about it. I'm going to kind of smooth that out a little bit. And this is going to be step 4, okay? Step 4. Step 4 is trimming. I'm going to trim the lip and I'm going to trim the foot a little bit. Now, I know that's pretty tragic that I made a flaw in it like that. Maybe it's not going to be so severe. Maybe the top of your artwork just has a little bit of a wave like this, right? And it's just bugging you. Here's how to remove that. Watch Anderson do this. I'm going to take my needle tool, and while it's spinning, expose about 1 inch of that tool, and I'm going to press it into the clay just below the flaw, okay? So watch this happen. My inside hand is going to catch the clay once it's cut off. I'm going to slowly let it cut. I can feel the needle, so I'm just going to lift off. So I just lifted the clay off. Isn't that crazy? I actually caught it with that. You can recycle that. And then I'm going to gently use my fingers here and just smooth out the lip a little bit more. And you won't even notice that that was there. Okay. Especially when you stop the wheel. Flaws and waves are really hard to notice. Okay. So take a note that you use your needle tool to trim the lip very carefully. Trim off the flaw, trim off the wave. Still step 4. This is where I get to use my favorite rib. Okay, this is kind of a kidney-shaped rib, they would call this if you were buying one. They make these out of metal. They make these out of plastic. Just depends. I like the wood version. Sometimes I take these home and I actually will sand this or even carve it so it's sharp again. This one's getting dull. Watch what I'm going to do here. I'm going to take this rib and I'm going to use the 90-degree angle right here. Watch on the view and just slowly kind of scrape off that little bottom section. Look how clean that became. That's awesome. If I try to do that with my fingers, it just wouldn't be the best because my finger is kind of rounded versus the 90-degree angle of this. And look at the other side of this. See all that clay I took off? So that just gets scraped off and goes into my bone pile, which I can use and recycle. And I'm going to change views really fast so you can see the top. I think that's important that you see the look of this from angled down, okay? Look how thin the lip is. It's a little thin, it'll work. Too thin and it sometimes warps in the kiln. This is gonna be okay. Wish it was a little thicker, but I think it was important to show you how to trim that. I have a lot of water in there, so I'm going to spin the wheel slowly, just use my sponge and soak up that. Wring that out back in the bucket. Now you can see the bottom of my artwork. I think I'll put a little classic Anderson spiral in there so that when you get done with your hot chocolate, you're like, yay, a spiral. Okay. Now, one other thing I'm going to think about right now is to maybe use that other rib to smooth out the lip a little bit. Just right here, just to round that off. It looks really squarish. I'm just going to show you that you have options right now to shape this. So this isn't really a step, but this is when this happens. I'm going to just wring out a little bit of water on here. Notice I'm at a slow speed. Watch some of the things I can do with the shape. I can take my hands almost like choking something here, okay? And I'm gonna just put those around the pot and just slowly bring my hand, okay, just look at this. I barely did anything. You see a change? That's called collaring, okay? Collaring. So I don't know what you're gonna say. You're gonna be like collaring equals choking or something in your notes like, but that's what you do if you want that shape, okay? And you can move your hands while you collar. Watch this. I'm going to start at the base, and I'm going to collar while I move up. See it change? It got taller. But my lip didn't like that because it was thin. Okay? So you kind of start to learn how the clay responds to different things. Another option is that you can with the inside hand, I can push like this. Watch me. I'll push and bow the clay out. And then maybe the outside hand will push it in. No. The inside hand can push out so much that this whole thing collapses too, right? Clay is pretty forgiving. If I really don't like this shape, this is kind of your typical put a handle right here mug, right? It's kind of cheesy. I can change that before I'm done. So let's just collar that bulge out, and maybe we'll literally just go with kind of a contemporary curve on this. I got a lot of clay down here, so I think I can actually pull one more time. I'm going to leave some finger marks. What do I mean by contemporary curve? It's kind of the crescent look. Now that's going to be cool. I like the finger marks because the glaze is going to settle in there, and I can take my rib and let's just trim off a little bit of the base. Oh yeah, I'm seeing a coffee mug right there. Okay, so there's a little bit of water that got back in there doing all those last steps. Just gonna wring that out. Never leave water in there. And I'm gonna smooth the lip of that. Pretty nice, right? Let's remove that. So this is gonna be step 5, just in time to end class. Okay, step 5 is getting this off the wheel. Classic question, how do I get it off the wheel? I actually take the wheel pan apart, set it aside. You don't have to take both pieces, but for the sake of the demo, I will. So note 1, sort of take your wheel apart. Note 2 is I'm gonna put a little bit of water on the wheel. You see that water? Put some over here. And this is where your wire cutter comes into play. I'm going to take my wire cutter and I'm going to put it on the wheel, and maybe just watch this here. I'm going to spin the wheel slowly and pull my wire through my pot. Okay, did you see it move? I'll do it one more time. Just slide that water under there. Oh, there it goes. It wants to come off. So I'm going to stop the wheel, just kind of skirt the tool out of there. Okay, the wire came out. And I have water under there, which is making this want to move real easy. That's a good thing. Got your bat handy. So I just set my bat right against this. See how I just line it up with this and just gently push this right off onto the bat. Voila. You see that? Now I know you're like, what? There's dents. You touched it. Hey, I'm going to trim this next time. I'm not worried about that. I'll smooth that out later. Okay. So there's a really nice looking mug minus a handle, right? A lot of times I make the handle and just let it chill over there so they're drying.